Right everyone, WeaponCollector here. Right, it's World UFO Day today, so to celebrate that I thought I would do a video with your encounters and sightings of UFOs. So I've had a lot of people send in stories, videos, pictures, so it should be quite an interesting video, I reckon. Right now I have no idea how long this video is going to go on for, because I'm just recording this intro, then I'm going to edit it all together. Hopefully it's reasonably long, but I don't think it's going to be as long as the Halloween video I did. Definitely not. So what I'm going to do, I plan to, while you're watching this, you would have seen that there's a live chat down the side so we can all talk about it. I won't do this intro for too long, we get into the interesting bits in a minute. But what we do is, when this video finishes, I recommend going to my channel and then just refreshing every now and then, because another live stream will come on afterwards where we can talk about UFOs for a bit more and talk about the video. So what you're going to see now are the stories that were sent in, including two of my own. One is something that actually happened this Friday, so last week. Pure coincidence, not planned obviously. I just thought while I was out there, because I was having a night out in the field, I thought, let's film the skies and see what happens. And something did. And then I'll tell you my other story a little bit later. So let's get on to the first one, which will be my one. There's some swearing in it and I'm drunk, so just be aware of that. I will come back after my one's played just to talk to you about it. Then I'll tell you my other story, and then we get down to everyone else's story, and I won't be back on until the very end. Alright? I hope you enjoy it. I'm back in a minute. Right, I don't know how much you're going to see of this, but I thought while I was out in the evening, I'll see if I could catch a UFO. You're going to have to listen to some people chatting bollocks in the background though, because I'm having a night out. Can't see no one, but... I'm pointing the camera up at the sky. Can you see any stars? Nah, it doesn't look like it. Don't look like you can see anything. Well, no, but it won't show up to the sky anyway, will it? I wanted to try and... But look. Yeah, look, even if I do that, look, it's a black.
Yeah, it's black screen. You can't see nothing.
Fuck it, don't matter. No. You're never gonna see this, but there is some fucking UFOs, look. I've actually fucking filmed them. What is in the sky right now?
UFOs. I don't know what they are.
Well, what is a UFO? It's not an alien ship, it's
an unidentified flying object.
Exactly.
So, that's aliens.
On the night that we was going to film for UFOs, we actually fucking seen some UFOs.
It's the Russians.
Can you see them on yours, Joe?
No.
I can't either. I can't either. What?
Put them in on CG after. They've gone now, they've disappeared.
They actually have disappeared. Well, what is a UFO? It's not an alien ship, it's
an unidentified flying object.
Exactly.
So, that's aliens.
On the night that we was going to film for UFOs, we actually fucking seen some UFOs.
Yeah, okay, there's some name coming up on there.
Can you see them on yours, Joe?
No. I can't see them on mine, man.
What?
Put them in on CG after. They've gone now, they've
Yeah.
They've disappeared.
So there you go. I don't know if you could actually see it on the video, but there was a series of orange dots in the sky, going across the sky quite weirdly. It was obviously Chinese lanterns. But it might not have been, but my opinion at the time was it was Chinese lanterns. But it was funny that at the time, you know, technically that is an unidentified flying object, so it sort of does count. And there's no proof it was Chinese lanterns. So yeah, quite a strange one. They want it that suddenly actually happened that night. 2 bits of footage. You may be able to see it. I'm not sure. I couldn't really see it, but you may have slightly different settings on your phones or your computers and that. You might have been able to hold it in a way that you could actually see these things going along and then disappearing. Yeah. So that's my one. My only other encounter I've ever had with anything UFO related was, it's hard for me to try and remember the age I was, but I suspect I was younger than 12, and I was having a backie on someone's bike. I think I was, as far as I remember, I was stood on the trick nuts. You know, you get those little handled trick nut things you can stand on. So riding along, my mate's riding along, and I've got my hands on his shoulder, stood on the back. And I suspect it. I can't remember. It wasn't dark. It definitely wasn't dark, but it was probably sort of just getting dark as far as I remember. And we came down an alleyway into my road, because my road's like a dead end, and one of the only ways into it is either the road in or an alleyway in. There's various ways in, but one of them's come down this alleyway, and then you're just facing a lovely straight road, and then, you know, a nice sort of sky view, basically, you know. So come out the alleyway, come down the road. So we're coming down the road, and I can't remember who was riding. It may have been Mark, it may have been someone else, maybe my cousin. I have no idea who was riding the bike now. But as we came around came onto the road, I looked up into the sky and saw this great big oval shaped thing in the sky, completely lit up, like it was, you know, that's how to explain it, but it was just a completely lit up rugby shaped thing in the sky. It shocked me so much. I remember jumping off the back of the bike and just standing there looking at it, thinking, fucking hell, what the hell is that? Never seen anything like it. And it was really slowly moving across the sky. And it was massive as well. It looked massive anyway. You know, when you're younger, things look bigger than you think. But I couldn't believe it for a second. And I looked around, and I'm sure, as far as I remember, there was other people stood out staring at this thing as it just went across the skies. And I ran down the road to get a closer look. And that's when I realised what it was. It was like a hot air balloon type thing, you know, like a, I don't know what they're called, but I described them as like a blimp. You know, like the big, but it was just, didn't look like there was anything underneath that would be piloting it, and it didn't have the fins on the back, but that's what it was. It was that. It wasn't a spaceship or anything. But I can remember the feeling at the time, like how shocking it was. So I imagine if you saw something that you never ever understood what it was, that must be quite freaky. Because I remember seeing that and being shocked and being like scared and what the fucking hell is that? You know, you cannot believe it. Slightly disappointing when you find out these things aren't what they are. But yeah, I can imagine if you saw something like that and never ever worked out what it was, that must be quite a shocking event to have. So that's the 2 UFO encounters I've had. One the other night that was probably just Chinese lanterns, and that one which was a hot air balloon type thing. So that's the end of my stories. I won't be back on this video till the end of it, but I'll be in the chat to talk to you. So hopefully you've been having a chat about what you've seen and what you think of these things. Now we'll get on to everyone else's stories. Some of it will be videos, some of it will be pictures, some of it will just be statements that people have put on, just to bolster the fact that a lot of people have seen these type of things, but they really can't explain it, and it's just, I've seen it and that's it. So I'll add those in just to show how many people do say they have seen things. Alright, so I hope you enjoy it. Keep watching. Don't forget to watch to the very end, and then don't forget to go and watch the live stream and join that. Josh Almighty. I don't have a video, but here's my story. I was 17 and me and my mum were on a balcony at our apartment complex. There were over 50 people out that day, most at the pool. There was a family cooking out. I started hearing kids and then people yelling. Me and my mum followed the points to a low-flying object, jet black and perfectly round. It was slowly flying towards us. Everyone yelling UFO immediately fell silent as the ball rolled open. It stretched out into a form, a 40-foot Greek godlike figure. With the wings of an angel, began to flap his wings not 20 feet above us. I remember his face, his yellow eyes, as he looked down at me and smiled. I don't tell this story. I don't want to remember. This exactly happened to me, and it breaks apart my scope of reality. Maybe someone else has had a similar experience. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everyone. This is a response video to WeaponCollector, one word, in England. Respectable guy. I respect him very much. Okay, the event that I witnessed and my brother witnessed was probably 1974, somewhere in there. We were both about 10 or 12 years old. I live in the Puget Sound area in Washington State. That's on the west coast of the U.S., in case you don't know. At that time, Washington State was a backwater. There was very little heavy industry, and it was one of those bright summer nights where there was no clouds and there was no light pollution. It was clean and safe area to grow up in. And we lived in a farming community. It was normal for us kids to get together and spread out blankets and spend the night sleeping outside. It was really safe here back then. And one night, it was just my brother and I. We're looking for shooting stars. That's what we did, you know. And we're just laying out there talking. Just my brother's at my left, and I said, "Hey, look, right up there, those stars are moving." They were moving like this. A couple of them, 2 or 3 of them. And that's what caught our attention, to look way out there to the west. And they were swirling and moving and making rapid movements like this, and then they would do pinwheel this way, this way. There was 2 or 3 of them. My brother said, "Look, there's more of them over here." So he pointed out another group of them. We watched those things so long that we got off the blankets and we got 2 of those reclining lawn chairs and laid there and watched these things for a long time. I don't know how long. This group over here joined this group, and it was like one at a time. I mean, these things were covering ground, man. Then they would pinwheel together, move like this and that, and pinwheel. So the 2 groups basically came together, and they were whirling around. Like 2 or 3 of them would whirl around like this, while another one would go up over here. It was absolutely unexplainable. They were just pinhole lights. They're tiny. And when they decided to depart, all of them, one of them broke off, and I remember it went to the south, and it was just like gone, out of sight. It's just gone like that fast. Then they started breaking off. No sound, nothing. Gone. Most of them looked like they stayed out over the Pacific. I cannot explain it. They were making maneuvers that nothing that we had at the time that we knew of was able to do. Now, the few satellites back in 1973, 74, they were not satellites. And if those objects were government of some kind, then they've had these things for a long time. Think about it. That 73, 74, yeah, they've had them for a long time. If they came from this planet, I have no clue. I have no clue where they came from or what they were. So that's my input for your video, Mike. So thanks for watching, everyone. Later.
Outdoor Sports CMA 39. UFOs are 100% real, just not the blibbering aliens on the way home from a day's work of zapping earthlings. to Pluto for a pint or two at their local space pub. The first recorded UFO was invented for the Germans in the 1930s by an Austrian called Victor Schauberger. He was forced to work for them. He didn't support the regime. Speaking of him, he invented amazing concepts before and after that. Solo. Definitely have a look at them when you have the time. He was forced to give his papers to the Americans just 5 days before he died, and after a while the US Army was supposedly testing prototypes that had built from Hannibal blueprints. Interesting stuff, but it does spoil the mystery a bit, I suppose. Lap bricks. Hey Mike, I have these 2 back-to-back videos from 4 years ago. Nothing too convincing, but somewhat interesting how the light in the sky just disappears. Hope these work for you. SRS Power. My granddad worked in radar for the RSRE and was employed to investigate UFOs for a few years. He told me the old argument about how many stars there are meant that there must be life out there somewhere, but he had no evidence of this. But extra-dimensional beings, he knew for sure. Z not Z. This took place in around 2003. I was working in a grass cutting team for a grounds maintenance company, and we were on our way to the firm's twin cab to yet another bit of grass that had to be cut. Whilst we were driving along, one of the other team members, who I shall call Osbert, a very religious fellow, who was also a liar, a thief, and a bit of a pervert as well, looked out of his window and said in a somewhat shaky voice, "What's that thing?" I looked past him and saw something that looked like a huge and elongated cold antibiotic capsule shape moving quite slowly across the sky at a bit of an angle to us. The thing was a sort of silvery white, or whitish silver, whichever you prefer, with a line of black vertical ovals along its side, about 1/8 of the thing's height. I could see no control surfaces of any kind, nor any obvious signs of propulsion. My first thought was that it might be an airship of some kind, but airships have fins and gondolas, and this didn't, which also ruled out any kind of dirigible. I have to say that I found it quite fascinating myself. However, Osbert didn't find it fascinating at all. He found it very, very scary and started to get rather agitated. I think he thought it was a demon of some kind, come for his soul, which given his nature would have been understandable. After all, what's the point of demons if they don't get people like Osbert? He was starting to get into a real panic, telling the driver to go fast, who obviously didn't much like the look of the thing either and had sped up already, and getting very close to a complete freak-out stage. So to calm him down, I told him it was just a very big Russian aircraft, an Antonov AN-124, in case anyone is interested. Bloody thing's huge, they are too, very impressive. Very often turn up at our local airport where I used to work, which calmed things down a fair bit. Of course I was lying, it looked nothing like any aircraft I'd ever seen before or since. As we watched, the thing moved quite sedately upwards and disappeared into the lowest clouds. In order to get a better idea of the thing's size, I later looked up some photographs of the Hindenburg airship, and I'd say that this was slightly shorter, but had a greater circumference. Of course, I only saw it at an angle, so it might not be correct. So what was it? An alien aircraft? An interdimensional vehicle? A time machine? Or something some government or other was playing around with? Damned if I know. It was interesting though.
Hello, so this is going to be my UFO story for Mike's video on UFOs or aerial phenomenon. And this is one I've told before because it's one where we found out what it actually was. It was a UFO until it was an identified flying object, so it went from UFO to an IFO. So basically, one night outside my house, this was years ago, loads of people were staring up at something in the sky, so we went out as well to look. And there was like a light flying around, you know, where you couldn't see anything, you couldn't hear any noise, but you could see like a bright glowing light that was sort of going around, and it wasn't going in a straight line, you know, it would go one way and then it would go up a bit and then it would go backwards, you know, like that. So it was moving in a way like a helicopter couldn't move and a plane couldn't move, and it was too low altitude to be those anyway. It was very, very weird. And eventually, I think it went into the path of a street light, and we were actually able to see what it was. And it was one of those Chinese lanterns. So what they are, if you don't know, it's a bit like a tiny hot air balloon. It's basically where there's kind of like a paper lantern, and you have a sort of candle type thing in it. I'm not sure exactly how they work, but you can look them up. And the heat or the sort of gas coming off from the fire works like a hot air balloon to make it float up. You know, it would basically work in a very similar way as if you had a helium balloon and put a light on a helium balloon, like a flashing light on a helium balloon, in the sense that when it's floating around in the dark, unless there's another light source, you won't be able to see what the object is. All you see is the light on it. So with a Chinese lantern, it'd be the candle. If it was a helium balloon, you know, you'd see the flashing light on it. And obviously, where it was picking up different air currents and like the wind and stuff, it was moving with the wind and like, you know, updrafts of air maybe from people's chimneys and stuff like that. So that was the reason why it was floating around, and it would suddenly change direction, you know, and move at different speeds. But until you actually saw what it was in the light, it seemed to be like, you know, a light that could break all the laws of sort of physics in the sense of, you know, how a plane would travel, for example, because it could just literally turn on the spot, you know, and go backwards. So yeah, if ever you see a light in the sky that's not super high altitude and it's moving in weird ways, it might be a Chinese lantern or a helium balloon with a light on it, because that sort of, if you think about it, would probably explain a lot of the weird lights people see in the sky that, you know, don't have any reasonable explanation. Obviously, if it's much higher like an aircraft, then it'd be obviously something different, but if it's just sort of a low-level weird light moving around, it's probably a balloon or a lantern that's just sort of floating around in the wind.
Z not Z. This story takes place during the summer of 1976, the summer of burning hell as I like to call it. Myself and a friend were on our motorbikes. We each had a Honda CB200, as we hadn't yet passed our bike tests. Riding through what is very pretty countryside in the daylight, returning from visiting some friends in the next county. At around 1:30 on a still and breezeless Saturday morning. We'd gotten about halfway back when we decided to stop for a cigarette and park the bikes on the wide roadside verge. There was a moment of excitement when my friend lit his cigarette the wrong way round and got a lungful of filter. The cool brand of cigarettes at the time were the Moore brand, which had dark brown colour all over, so it was easy enough to do in the dark. After he'd finished coughing and swearing, I was quite impressed at how well he did the two things at the same time. He lit another one the right way round, and we stood by the bikes enjoying our smokes and looking into the clear starry sky. After about 30 seconds, a bright light stabbed downwards and lit up the side of a nearby hill. I first thought it was a military helicopter. We wondered what they were up to. My friend, who had a somewhat fanciful imagination, thought they might have been after a spy or maybe a saboteur. I thought it was more likely that it was just crew doing some nighttime navigation training and were shining the light to look for landmarks. Then we realised we couldn't hear any helicopter noises. We couldn't see what was shining the light either, which we thought was a bit odd. The light moved slowly across the hill till it was shining on the other slope. Then suddenly, whatever it was, suddenly dropped downwards far faster than you'd expect from a helicopter or aircraft and disappeared behind the hill. My friend said something like, "Fucking hell, they're crashing," or something like that anyway. I can't remember exactly. We were waiting for the sounds of an impact, or even an explosion, but there were none. After a few seconds we looked at each other and said, "That's strange." My friend replied that it wasn't just strange, it was bloody weird, and that he didn't much like it. I had to admit that I wasn't too keen on it either, and when my friend said he thought that whatever it was couldn't have been from this planet, otherwise it would have crashed, I didn't disagree with him. Anyway, that thought was enough for us. The smokes were hurled away, the bikes were quickly started, and we were off. All I can say is that it was a good job there was no plot about, as we'd have got a nasty fine for speeding that night, if there had been. As to what it was, I still can't say, as we never saw what it was that was shining the light, which I suppose does mean it was unidentified. And I often wondered what that thing might have been, but I still can't come up with an answer, so I'll leave it to everyone else to come up with suggestions. David. Just an interesting video I captured last year. It's not a UFO, unfortunately. It's the planet Venus. I noticed a very, very bright light in the sky last year. It hung about for a couple of weeks, traversing across the sky in a planetary motion. I had no idea what it was at first. I've never seen it so bright. Ever. Anyway, got the camcorder out and filmed it from the bedroom window. When using the digital zoom to the max, it turns into this weird shape. I'd seen a similar video posted on YouTube, and an explanation of the weird shape was something to do with the imaging chip sensor trying to focus on something that far away, or something like that. Anyway, thought I'd share it even though it's not a UFO. Timbo66. Not much of a story. I once saw a small silver object circling the moon at about 20 revolutions per minute, about 30 years ago. I do a bit of astronomy. Sure, there's life out there somewhere. Eliane. Seen many a UFO myself. No one ever believes me.
Hello everybody, CM Militaria here, and today I wanted to share my UFO/weird sightings. So this happened many years ago. It was probably 12 years ago, when I was probably around 7, 8, around about that age. I was over my nan and granddad's near where I live in the countryside. It was probably around about 7 o'clock at night, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, around about that time, coming home to my house. When I stepped outside, we were just looking around in the air at the night sky as you do normally, and all the stars were out, you know, how it is, how the normal night sky is, and then I saw this very weird black object. Now, like I said, to this day, I'm still not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it was a B-2 stealth bomber that was just at a weird angle to me. Yeah, I'm really not sure what it was, but it was this weird triangle black object. If I do manage to find a picture of what it kind of looked like, I will put it on screen. But yeah, I'm still not totally sure what it was. Like I said, it could have been a B-2 stealth bomber. I could have just caught it at the wrong angle. But yeah, it was there, it had lights on it. It was stationary, it wasn't moving. Then all of a sudden, I stopped looking because my nan wanted me to help her do something in the house again before we went, and I came back outside and it was gone. So yeah, what do you guys think about this? I'm really not sure what this was, but if you have any information, I'd love to see it in Mike's comments.
Zed not Z. This account happened a couple of years ago. Happened on a slightly cloudy late summer night at around midnight. I'd just finished putting the birds breakfast out for them and was standing on the doorstep enjoying my last smoke of the day, when I became aware of the sound of a jet aircraft approaching from an odd direction. It was nowhere near the usual flight paths from the local airport, which was odd to start with. Plus it was loud, and it was getting louder. So the aircraft was obviously flying quite a bit lower than the usual airliner would, which again was strange. Suddenly something flew over the top of my house. I couldn't actually see what it was, but again, strangely, it wasn't showing any navigation lights. Just two bright white lights, about the distance apart that a twin-engined airliner wingtips would be. Other than that, it showed no lights whatsoever. Sorry to use the same word again, but it was all so strange. It carried on in a northeasterly direction, and it was shifting like a good one. I then realised that the noise was still coming from behind me, and was still getting louder. So it wasn't the thing that had just flown over me making it. Then the aircraft that was making such a racket flew over me. This one was also going like a bat out of hell, but was showing navigation lights. It was also somewhat smaller than the first one, and was about the size of a Typhoon or an F-15. My money would be a Typhoon. It was quite obvious that it was chasing the first thing, as it was following the same course. I watched for a minute or so until both of them disappeared into the darkness. The second one didn't seem to be gaining on the first, from what I could tell, but was giving it a damn good go without going supersonic. At first I thought it might have been some Russian military aircraft that had strayed inland during one of their Let's Annoy the RAF flights. But if that was the case, why did it not show any navigation lights? They normally keep within the regulations for that sort of thing, I believe. And if it was something more clandestine, then they wouldn't show any lights at all, as that would be rather defeat the object of their mission. I don't know what the first thing was at all, but I think it was something that the military didn't like the look of. The next day my neighbours were complaining about the noise, which woke them up, but none of them got out of bed to see what was making it, unfortunately. So that's it. If anyone can come up with a logical explanation for what I saw, I'd be very interested to hear it. By the way, I don't live that far from the sighting in the first story. Maybe 5 or 6 miles as the crow flies.
Phenomena. Do 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 do. Phenomena. Do 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 do. Phenomena. Do 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 do. I hadn't even heard the term unidentified aerial phenomena until very recently. I always just used to go with UFO, but I think actually unidentified aerial phenomena much better suits what I saw up here. I'm up on top of Dunstable Downs, which is on the northern edge of the Chiltern Hills in southeastern England, and this was a hangout spot. When I was about 18, 19 years old, me and a few of my mates all had old VWs that we'd customised, you know, and we used to come and hang out up here at night, have fires and stuff. None of which you can do anymore, it's all a lot more managed. The rain's getting heavy. What I saw was just down there. I'm going to go and jump back in the car and we shall discuss it further. This rain's going nowhere, but this is the location. Anyway, I was parked at the time, I wasn't in this car park, I was parked just over there where it's just grass. You used to be able to park just on the grass, but we're talking down there just beyond the Glider Club. I think actually it was slightly more in that direction towards Wellhead, where there are lots of springs, interestingly, because what I think this was that I saw has been, you know, quite closely associated with springs and chalk aquifers. Anyway, this is too much. I'm going to go over the shed. I'll see you there. So much rain. Getting soaked. I didn't choose the right day for this, did I? Right. Let's go and sit down in the dry. When in doubt, jam jar. Right, where were we? We were in 1992, I think. Actually, before we go to 1992, very briefly, my very first UFO experience, I was about 4 or 5 years old, and it was Christmas morning. And I looked out the lounge window, the little house we lived in at the time, and I saw what in hindsight was obviously a meteor. I saw this meteor go flashing across the sky in front of the moon. It was early morning, so it was still dark. And I remember rushing upstairs to tell Mum and Dad that I'd just seen Santa Claus flying back to Greenland before it gets light. I think I might have been confusing Santa Claus with vampires at the time, I don't know. But yeah, that was a meteor I saw when I was very small. And I didn't think it was a UFO, I thought it was Santa. But I think it counts, doesn't it? It does count as a UFO. Back to 1992. I was sat at the top of the downs there where we just were in the rain. Sitting there in my Beetle. And for some reason I was the only one there. I can't remember why. I don't know if I'd got there before everybody else or whatever. No idea. I can't remember what time of year it was, but it was dark. I was sitting up there on my own one night, and off in the distance, down where I showed you on the lower ground, just beyond the gliding club, I could see this ball of light. It was a kind of blue. It wasn't a warm yellowy orangey light. It was a bluish white light. Difficult to tell exactly how big it was. I'd guess somewhere between a tennis ball and a netball, basketball, you know, football, that sort of size. and it was moving in a manner which seemed intelligently controlled to me. I was sitting there watching this thing, and you could see it down roughly at ground level most of the time. It was kind of hovering above what I perceived to be about ground level. It was dark, remember. What helped me sort of decide it was at ground level was because as it was moving along, I could see it coming on and off as it went past bushes and trees in front of it. You could see it flickering in and out of your line of sight as it went behind the bushes and the trees. And there's lots of little mounds and hills and things down there as well. And it wasn't just moving horizontally. Every now and then it would rise dead vertically to, I don't know, a height of not much, 20-30 feet maybe. It would slowly and very deliberately looking rise up to a height of 20 or 30 feet, pause, come back down again, and then continue its horizontal. You know, it looked like it was being controlled somehow. It didn't look like a very random natural phenomena. Now, I just sat and watched it. It was a fair bit off in the distance. Didn't seem to be any sort of threat or anything like that, you know. I was just sitting there watching it. It was all very entertaining. And then after, I don't know, I'd say, this didn't go any longer than maybe 4 minutes, something like that. And I can't remember how it disappeared. I can't remember if it faded out. It certainly didn't do anything as dramatic as shooting off into space or anything like that. I think it just kind of went behind a tree and never came out again, you know. I didn't perceive it as a UFO. I didn't know what to make of it. But me being the earthy kind of fella that I am, I just set it in my mind for the fun of it. I set it in my mind that maybe I'd seen a will-o'-the-wisp. You know, one of these old traditional sort of spirit things that I don't know if you remember the Kenneth Williams animated series from the early 80s, Will-o'-the-Wisp. It's a spirit that wanders around at night, you know. I'd sort of put it in my head, oh, maybe that's what I saw, that'd be good, wouldn't it, you know. And I mentioned this in a Halloween video that went on Mike's channel, and our mate Zed, Mr. Z not Z, he suggested that maybe what I'd seen was ball lightning. Now, I used to read the 14 Times. I'm kind of aware of ball lightning, but I've never really looked at videos of it or anything like that. And that name, ball lightning, the lightning bit, it makes you just think, oh, up in the sky. And this thing I saw, it was pretty much at ground level. But I started looking up some videos and some footage of ball lightning, and yeah, that's what I saw. I'm 99% certain that was ball lightning. It's no disappointment though to learn that was probably ball lightning, because ball lightning itself is an absolute mystery to science. Nobody's got any idea what this stuff is. You just have to go on Wikipedia and you'll see a list of, I don't know what, 12 to 15 different scientific theories as to what ball lightning might actually be. It's so rare and random, nobody can measure it, nobody can test it. And I'm extremely lucky to have seen it, you know. So the fact that it wasn't some earth spirit and the fact that it wasn't aliens really doesn't matter. What I saw was something very rare and special. Some of these theories, they say it's kind of residual ionized air left over after a lightning strike. Other theories say that it's to do with the amount of silica and calcium in the soil. Well, calcium in the soil, yes, I can see that, because we're on a big old load of chalk here, and a couple of 100 feet down below that chalk are vast freshwater aquifers. And all along this ridge of chalk hills that I live on, it really is a hot spot for ball lightning. People see it a lot. They see it around aquifers and springs, and they see it in chalky areas. And it's no coincidence that people see it in the same places as you get crop circles, for example. We do get the occasional crop circle around here, and I'm really hoping that one day I might, you know, well, it's a long shot, but I might one day, you never know, get to film a crop circle for you, because they tend to appear, it's not been for a few years now, but they tend to appear over by Barton le Clay where I filmed before. Remember that beautiful spring over in the Barton Hills? And Sharpano clappers, they appear on the fields around there. And there's a video I've seen on YouTube. Now let me have a look. I wrote it down. There's a video on YouTube. It's only about 45 seconds long. It's called Ball of Light, Wiltshire, by a lady called Kerry McKenna. That particular video shows very much what I saw, almost exactly. I suspect what I saw was a bit bigger than what she filmed, but it's difficult to tell. It depends on how intensely bright it was, etc, etc. But if you go and see that video there, it's only 45 seconds long. That's a pretty accurate image of what I saw. Other images of ball lightning show kind of plasma balls with all fuzzy edges and stuff. What I saw was a very clean, crisp ball of light. And I just remembered, there's another theory, which is a different one. Now this theory, they've actually managed to reproduce under laboratory conditions. They've actually made ball lightning happen, in a sense. What they've done is they bombarded people's brains with magnetism, basically, electromagnetism, and that caused people to have visual hallucinations. There are certain, levels of magnetic whatever that you can blast into somebody's brain, and it'll induce some very specific visual hallucinations, and what they see is balls of light. So that is another possibility. That's interesting. Maybe there could be some sort of disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field, and if you're in the right place at the right time, it will make you see ball lightning. Or maybe it could be because there's a huge alien mothership just passing overhead, thus making it even more of a UFO experience. I don't suppose I'll ever get to see ball lightning again, so I'm pretty lucky to have seen it. It's a shame it happened when it did, because people weren't walking around with mobile phones even, let alone cameras on their phones. Not that my phone's even got a camera on it anyway, so it wouldn't make any difference, would it? Anyway, yeah, I don't suppose I'll ever see it again. So what I'm saying is, it's a shame in a way that I haven't got it on video. But you can go and take a look at that, what was it, Ball of Light Wiltshire video. I'll give you a fair idea of what I saw. I hope you found that mildly interesting. Point is, really, that even though I think I've explained it, it was still a pretty fantastic thing to see. Now keep your eyes open, you never know, you might get to see some yourself. See you later.
David, regards to your UFO stories, at one point I was working in BT and we took the contract for the military network, connecting personnel within bases to other bases and to landlines, etc. I also took the UFO sighting calls, which we had to log. Anyway, didn't get a lot of them, surprisingly enough, but when they did come in, it would normally be a couple of calls that had come in on the same night from people in different parts of the UK, hundreds of miles away from each other, usually describing the same type of UFO. Occasionally you'd get someone reporting something and you'd think, complete bollocks. But when you and your colleagues get multiple calls on the same night, and you see them describing more or less the same thing, but in different parts of the country, especially when you look at the time they reported it happened, which we had to log, and you can see they lived hundreds of miles from each other, but the sightings were maybe 10-15 minutes apart. It does make you wonder. UFO, experimental military technology, who knows, but there is meant to be a US military disclosure later this month about UFOs. So absolutely, there has been cover-ups of some kind.
Hello everyone, this is Jeans and Jumper, and this is my story of my UFO encounter. Picture scene, 1994, Leicestershire primary school. It's summertime or late spring, and we're in the playground discussing the new latest football boots that have come out. This is how I can date it correctly. I remember it as if it was yesterday. There's two or three of us talking in the playground at the back, and a dinner lady nearby called Gail. and we were talking about the new Adidas Predator boots at the time, and I was just gazing to the distance, as I often do. That's where we were in the playground, just there, and looking in this direction, there was some pylons going across, looking like that, but a further distance, about a few miles away. So it wasn't as clear as that. But as I was looking at the pylons, I noticed something different, something weird moving above it. Now, the closest I can find of an image would be that. Now, it looked like an elongated Tic Tac, but the colour was white, but it was like the colour white with a real bright light being shone against it, so it was just bright white. It was really, really bright. And what really got me was how it was with the pylons. It was above the top row of cables, and it was going across like that, and then back across, then back across, in a very quick darting motion, a lot smoother than I can do it with this this mouse cursor. So it's just going across, like that, really quick, really fast, from left to right, left to right, left to right, and it just made me freeze. And I was watching this for, felt like minutes, but it was probably seconds, and I quickly shouted to the dinner lady, as a 9-year-old child would do when he sees such a crazy thing. And I just said, "What's that?" And when you're looking up for an adult for a reasoned response, and hers was just shock. She had no explanation of it whatsoever, and I just kept watching it, and we were silent there watching it, and it kept going like that, like that, like that. And then I kept watching it, but the dinner lady turned to speak to the girl, Liz, that we were with. And as it was going like that suddenly it stopped right there and went poosh, shot up into the sky. I've never seen anything move that quick in my life, before or after. It just went poosh, upwards and disappeared. The size of it just got smaller and smaller in an instant, and just it disappeared. And that's my story. Yeah, so bit weird. Remember it like yesterday. It's one of my most vivid memories of my life. Yeah, that's my story.
Right, so there you go. That was all the stories. I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed that. Very interesting stuff. Some stories a bit like mine, where it looked very unusual, strange, and then it can be explained. Some things 100% definitely unexplainable. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I hope you're having a good discussion about it. I would have been in the chat talking to you with these things anyway. If you're re-watching this, feel free to comment and let me know if you've got any stories. And sorry if you missed the video, anyone who wanted to join in. I did give people at least 2 weeks and 2 or 3 warnings that it was coming up, so I did try to get everyone in on the video. Yeah, fascinating stuff really, isn't it? Yeah, must be very interesting to see these things, and scary, and well, not necessarily scary. Sometimes it's just very bizarre situations, isn't it? But yeah. So I'm going to do a live stream now. So when this video finishes, which will be any minute now, you'll see the outro bit. Go to my channel and just look out for the main video. If you refresh a couple of times, go off the channel, come back on. Eventually that live video will pop up any minute now. Alright? I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to join the live stream so we can have a chat. Alright? See you later. And thank you everyone who joined in, I appreciate it. If it wasn't for you, these videos wouldn't get made, so yeah. I appreciate it. Cheers everyone. See you later.